all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus 8. Spiritual warfare for betrayed men. We fight principalities, not flesh. Feminism, Marxism. Misandry, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Spiritual Warfare for Betrayed Men, a field guide for men who still notice reality, the war paint fraud, how aesthetic militarization masks evolutionary deception, and why silence is the sound of incompetence. You have likely felt it, the stinging dismissal when a woman claims her inability to articulate a logical argument is actually hoarding energy against your male monologue, while your mere request for clarity is framed as an act of ocular incarceration. This is not an exaggeration. It is the textbook definition of semantic inflation, a sophisticated propaganda loop where asymmetric status assigns women the role of the moral patient and men the moral agent, thereby rigging the game before it begins. We are told to accept that a woman's silence is a presence of trauma, a claim that demands we suspend the trivium and ignore the glaring reality that if competence is violence, then incompetence is the ultimate virtue. This is the gambit of gynocentrism to reframe the essential friction of civil society associations, the dialectic necessary for truth, as a system of oppression, thereby granting themselves immunity from the duty of rational engagement. We are living through a deliberate epistemic coup d'etat where the very biological imperatives of Western civilization are rebranded as violence. The article we are about to dissect is a masterclass in the sayaj, nonaj, meaning feeling duddy power sanction immunity feedback loop, a recursive trap designed to pathologize male competence while sanctifying female narcissism. When they tell you that makeup is armor or that distraction is rebellion, they are using gamma bias to amplify their suffering and minimize your existence, effectively turning the workplace into a therapy session where facts are hate speech and logic is a microaggression. They want you to believe that your demand for focus is an extraction of cognitive surplus, when in reality they are simply refusing to climb the apprenticeship mastery ladder, preferring instead to weaponize their own akrasia, weakness of will, as a political stance. It is time to stop playing by their rules and recognize the empathy gap for what it is, a mechanism of male disposability that views your struggle for survival as a default setting rather than a crisis. We are going to use the trivium to surgically dismantle the lie of aesthetic militarization, replacing the feminist victim narrative with the cold hard truths of evolutionary psychology and natural law. Prepare to see the Matrix for what it is, a conspiracy of lies that trades the transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness for a feelings-based tyranny that seeks to render you obsolete. We will prove that their ideology is not liberation, but a self-sealing spell of ignorance designed to protect the wicked from the consequences of their own deceit. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. Aesthetic militarization, the silent warfare of everyday survival in the hallowed halls of corporate boardrooms, and the suffocating intimacy of the dining room table. A Cold War rages, a war not fought with artillery. But with acoustics and aesthetics, we hear the constant droning demand from the patriarchal hegemony: speak up, smile, focus. These are not neutral requests. They are the chains of ocular incarceration. a system where the very biology of the female existence is policed, commodified, and pathologized. We must recognize that what the oppressive class calls distraction or vanity is, in truth, the only available shelter for the marginalized in a storm of male entitlement. Consider the theater of the modern meeting. The man speaks. The room listens. This is the default setting of a world built on asymmetric status. When a woman dares to interrupt the flow of male monologue, she is not participating, she is transgressing. The literature of gender studies confirms what every woman knows viscerally. Women's silence is not an absence of voice, but a presence of trauma. When we are silent, we are not empty. We are hoarding our energy to survive the emotional labor of managing male egos. The so-called speaker tips handed out by HR departments, tools designed to help women sound more authoritative, are nothing more than instructions on how to mimic the aggressor. We are told to lean in, but leaning in only gets you closer to the fire. To demand that women speak in a tone calibrated to male comfort is an act of violence. Our silence is our boundary. Our refusal to articulate your thoughts on your timeline is a radical reclamation of autonomy. This extends to the very skin we inhabit. The bourgeois reduction of makeup to vanity is a simplistic lie propagated by those who have never felt the naked vulnerability of the female form in a predatory world. We must reframe this discussion through the lens of aesthetic militarization. Makeup is not decoration, it is armor. When a woman applies eyeliner, she is drawing fortifications against the invasive, weaponized gaze of the patriarchy. It is a semaphore of survival. A slick of red lipstick is a warning sign. I am curated, I am conscious. Do not touch. The moralizing judgment women face for wearing too much or too little is merely the sanction mechanism of the status quo, punishing women for failing to be perfectly consumable objects, while simultaneously shaming them for attempting to protect themselves. Every glance in the mirror is a tactical assessment of safety in a world where female beauty is quantified as male access rights. Finally, we must dismantle the toxic moralization of focus. The capitalist patriarchal complex demands unblinking attention because it thrives on the extraction of female cognitive surplus. When a woman is distracted, checking her phone, looking away, drifting into her own thoughts, she is not failing a moral test. She is engaging in a necessary act of dissociation from a reality that denies her humanity. To treat distraction as a sin is to pathologize the female coping mechanism. Men have the luxury of focus because the world was built to reflect them. For women, focus is a trap. To focus entirely is to submit entirely. Therefore, distraction is an act of rebellion. It is a refusal to grant the system the satisfaction of our total compliance. We reject the demand to be seen, heard, and attentive on terms defined by our oppressors. We recognize that our silence, our armor, and our wandering minds are not flaws to be fixed. They are the tools of our resistance. Deconstruct the gaze, dismantle the noise. The gambit of gynocentrism, deconstructing the epistemic fraud of ocular incarceration. Consider the sheer, unadulterated narcissism required to claim that applying mascara is a military fortification, a desperate act of survival against a predatory world. The article titled "Aesthetic Militarization" presents a worldview so solipsistic it would make a tyrant blush, framing the basic requirements of social civility, speaking clearly, making eye contact, paying attention as a sophisticated conspiracy called ocular incarceration. This is not analysis, it is the tantrum of a terminal adolescent dressed in the vocabulary of a critical theorist. To decode this drivel, we must deploy the ruthless machinery of the status quo ek knowledge meaning feeling duddy poor sanction immunity model. Watch how the propaganda loop operates. Status is assigned asymmetrically, positioning women as the moral patient, the victim, and men as the moral agent, the oppressor. Chronology is identity gated. Unless you possess the lived experience of womanhood, your observation that a meeting requires participation is dismissed as ignorance. Maining is grotesquely inflated. A request to speak up is no longer a logistical necessity for business efficiency, but an act of violence. Feeling is treated as truth. If a woman feels uncomfortable being looked at, that feeling is transmuted into objective reality, regardless of intent. This leads to a one-way duty. Men must adjust their behavior to accommodate female fragility, while men are stripped of their right to demand competence. Power is frozen as default male, a static construct used to justify the constant extraction of male resources and compliance. Sanction is the mechanism of enforcement, shaming, HR complaints, and social ostracization for microaggressions. Finally, the ideology is sealed with immunity. If you criticize this frame, you are proving your bias, engaging in seismic mansplaining, or validating the very trauma that invented the lie. It is a perfect autoregressive loop of self-deception designed to parasitize the productive capacity of men while absolving women of all adult responsibility. The neologism ocular incarceration is a masterpiece of semantic inflation, a linguistic Trojan horse designed to smuggle totalitarian control into the boardroom under the guise of liberation. Let us apply the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric to dismantle this fraud. Grammar, ocular refers to the eye, incarceration refers to imprisonment. By etymology, the phrase implies that the act of seeing is a form of imprisonment. Logic, this is a category error. Vision is a passive faculty of perception. Unless the viewer is physically restraining the subject, no imprisonment is occurring. To claim that being observed is a form of captivity is to reject the fundamental nature of human intersubjectivity. Rhetoric, the term is chosen solely for its emotive weight to conjure images of jails and chains where none exist. Under natural law, the gaze is the medium of recognition. To look upon another is to acknowledge their existence in the polis. The article demands we dismantle this friction, yet friction is precisely what allows civil society associations to function. Without the shared expectation of attention and communication, the very chains they despise, trade, dialogue, and law become impossible. They are not asking for freedom. They are demanding the right to be inscrutable, to exist in a state of perpetual infantilism, where the demands of reality are categorized as abuse because they trigger a feeling. This brings us to the speaker tips distributed by HR departments, which the author dismisses as instructions on how to mimic the aggressor. Here we see the sanction mechanism of the leftist conspiracy in full force. HR is not an administrative body. It is the commissariat of the corporate gulag, tasked with enforcing moral asymmetry. When a man is told to modify his tone, it is sensitivity training. When a woman is told to speak up, it is oppression. The article posits that leaning in brings you closer to the fire, revealing a profound cowardice disguised as strategy. In the traditions of Western civilization, from the Stoics to the industrialists, the fire is where the work happens. The apprenticeship mastery ladder requires one to confront heat, pressure, and resistance to forge competence. By reframing the demand for competence as aggression, the ideology shields the incompetent from the consequences of their mediocrity. This is gamma bias in its purest form. Male authority is framed as default, powerful, frozen power, and therefore threatening, while female authority is non-existent. Excused by the claim that they are hoarding energy to survive emotional labor. They want the status of the master without the burden of the duty, the authority of the boss without the risk of the decision. Consider the audacity of claiming that women's silence is not an absence of voice, but a presence of trauma. This is the ultimate evasion, a card played to avoid dialectic and due process. We can construct a simple syllogism to expose the hollowness of this premise, major premise. Competence and truth-seeking in a civil society require the dialectic exchange of ideas, Aristotle, Aquinas. Minor premise. The article posits that female silence is a valid state of hoarding energy to avoid the violence of male dialogue. Conclusion. Therefore, the article posits that female incompetence and emotional instability are moral virtues that supersede the requirements of truth and civil order. If a woman enters a boardroom and her silence is treated not as a lack of preparation, but as a radical reclamation of autonomy, she has effectively placed herself outside the realm of rational discourse. She is an NPC, non-playable character, in the economy of ideas, consuming resources, the salary, the seat at the table, but contributing nothing but grievances. The male monologue they complain about is simply the sound of the engine running while they refuse to help drive the car. The article redefines distraction, checking a phone, drifting off as a necessary act of dissociation and rebellion. This is the language of the addict. To focus is to submit, they argue, but submission to what? To reality, to the task at hand. The transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness demand that we align our minds with the object of our study. To reject focus is to reject truth itself. This is not rebellion. It is a behavioral display of male disposability in reverse. They expect the men to focus, i.e., do the work, solve the problems, generate the surplus value, while the women reserve the right to mentally check out, protected by the shield of their supposed oppression. It is a parasitic relationship. The cognitive surplus they whine about being extracted is the very cognitive load that keeps the lights on. If men adopted this rebellious stance, civilization would collapse in 48 hours. The infrastructure, the grid, the logistics, the code, all of it is maintained by men who do not have the luxury of dissociating because the capitalist patriarchal complex is actually just reality. Ultimately, this drivel is an expression of sustained threat-focused motivation toward men, what we define as hate. It dehumanizes men by framing our biological imperatives and social structures as a vast conspiracy to commodify and pathologize women. It projects the female capacity for deceit and cruelty onto the male gaze, accusing us of weaponized looking, while they weaponize their own victimhood to extract resources and sympathy. They claim makeup is armor, but it is actually a semaphore of deception, a hyper-stimulated signal designed to hijack male visual circuitry, a fact known to evolutionary psychologists like David Buss, yet ignored by the solipsistic feminist who thinks her eyeliner is a tactical defense against a predatory world. The world is not predatory, it is indifferent. Men build shelters to protect women from the elements, and women respond by demanding the shelter be dismantled because the curtains are oppressive. We must reject this therapy language coercion. We must see it for what it is, a spiritual pathology, a demonic possession of the intellect that seeks to invert the good. Do not apologize for your gaze. Do not apologize for demanding competence. Recognize the aesthetic militarization for what it is, the white flag of a movement that has run out of ideas and is now simply throwing a tantrum in the ruins of the civilization men built. This NPC programming does not merely stop at the silencing of dissent, it actively inverts the moral hierarchy to justify the erasure of male pain. She celebrates her own mental inconstancy as a form of power, mistaking the vice of acrasia for virtue, while demanding that the male competence required for civilization apologize for its existence. Watch closely as we expose the empathy gap, the engine that renders male suffering invisible while framing female vanity, her so-called aesthetic militarization, not as biological sexual signaling, but as a sacred right of victimhood. It is time to dismantle the lie that men are disposable utilities and women are fragile ornaments, using the cold logic of evolutionary reality. The Apocrypha of Aesthetics, exposing the evolutionary lie of female victimhood. Examine carefully what you just read. It's not a manifesto, it's a confession of spiritual decay. The writer claims to be a soldier in silent warfare, but in reality, she's merely a deserter from the battlefield of reality. This piece is a textbook example of the autoregressive loop of leftist ideology, a recursive nightmare where logic is consumed by feeling as truth and regurgitated as meaning. Let's apply the scalpel of the trivium to this carcass of nonsense. The writer operates on the irreducible axis of propaganda. Satius is assigned to women as the ultimate moral patients and men as the hegemonic oppressors. New Age is identity-gated, meaning only those with the lived experience of female victimhood are allowed to speak. Meaning is inflated so that a request to speak up becomes ocular incarceration. Feeling replaces objective fact, where personal discomfort equals actual harm. Ditty is a one-way street demanding men adjust their behavior to soothe female distress. Poa is framed as something men hoard, yet paradoxically, women hold the ultimate power to silence men with a single accusation. Sanction is the immediate cancellation of any dissent, and immunity is the self-sealing mechanism where any criticism is simply reframed as proof of the patriarchy. It's a closed system of intellectual inbreeding designed to protect the ego from the harsh light of truth. The writer is an NPC, a non-player character, reciting scripts generated by the collective psychosis of cultural Marxism, devoid of any original thought or connection to the transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness. Consider the absurdity of aesthetic militarization. Proponents of this view want you to believe that eyeliner is a fortified bunker and red lipstick is a shield. This is a lie born of the evolutionary psychology that the left loves to hate. David Buss, a preeminent evolutionary psychologist, has empirically demonstrated that makeup is not defensive armor. It is offensive weaponry in the mating market. Red lipstick mimics the vasodilation of sexual arousal. Eyeliner and mascara exaggerate the neotenous features of youth and fertility. This is high-value sexual signaling, a come-hither broadcast to high-status males, not a semaphore of danger. This writer claims the male gaze is predatory, yet she spends hours curating her appearance to invite that very gaze. It is a strategic hustle, a mating tactic as old as humanity, dressed up in the cheap costume of victimhood. By framing her desire to be sexually desired as a defense mechanism against men's desire, she engages in a rhetorical sleight of hand that would make a sophist blush. She demands the benefits of being a consumable object, attention, resources, status, while viciously condemning the system that values her precisely because of her aesthetic appeal. It is the simultaneous whore and Madonna complex, a psychological dissonance that is resolved only by blaming the man for looking at what she spent 3 hours putting on display. This brings us to the sickening reality of the empathy gap and male disposability. The writer weeps crocodile tears over the naked vulnerability of the female form, ignoring the stark statistical reality that men are the ones truly exposed to the elements of a hostile world. Men constitute the vast majority of workplace fatalities, suicides, and combat deaths. When a man walks into a corporate boardroom, he is not armored by a patriarchy. He is walking a tightrope of performance where one slip spells financial and social ruin. He has no aesthetic militarization to fall back on, no makeup to hide his fatigue or his fear. His worth is tied entirely to his utility, his production, and his silence. He is disposable. Society does not care if he is distracted or vulnerable. It demands he produces or he is replaced. While this woman worries about the violence of being asked to speak up, men are being legally stripped of their due process in family courts, arrested on false accusations without evidence, and alienated from their children. Her trauma is a luxury item. His suffering is the fuel that runs the engine of civilization. To equate her discomfort with his existential erasure is an act of profound moral narcissism, a gamma bias that amplifies female suffering while minimizing male sacrifice to the point of invisibility. We must also address the assault on the excellence of concentration. The Western heritage from the Stoics to the Scholastics regards moderation and attention as the foundation of a sound soul and a functional society. Aristotle characterized virtue as a balance between extremes. To lack attention is to exhibit the flaw of akrasia, weakness of will. The writer tries to transform this moral shortcoming into radical independence. She labels distraction as resistance, but resistance against what? Against reason, against obligation, against the requirement of skill. This resembles the language of a child who declines to do her schoolwork because the system is unjust. In the context of the apprenticeship mastery hierarchy, one must embrace the discipline of concentration to attain expertise. You cannot master the trivium or construct a cathedral or develop an operating system if you engage in necessary detachment whenever your feelings are wounded. By advocating distraction as a political stance, she is not tearing down the capitalist patriarchal structure. She is destroying the mental capabilities needed for human prosperity. She encourages you to become a passive consumer instead of a skilled creator. As Schopenhauer observed in his blunt insights about the nature of women, they often lean toward immediate feeling and perception, lacking the aptitude for abstract, continuous reasoning that constructs and maintains civilizations. This piece confirms that observation, it praises the scattered attention of the child, while mocking the concentrated discipline of the father. Finally, let us examine the logical conclusion of this absurdity through a syllogism derived from the political philosophy of the mixed constitution. Major premise: the preservation of a free society demands subsidiarity, addressing issues at the most local, competent level, which requires individuals of sound judgment and focus to manage their own affairs and contribute to the common welfare. Minor premise: focus, clarity, and the readiness to engage in dialectic are the prerequisites for sound judgment and the exercise of authority. Conclusion: consequently, by attacking focus, recasting clarity as violence, and promoting distraction as virtue, the writer is advocating for the destruction of the individual competence essential for subsidiarity, which inevitably leads to the collapse of the mixed constitution and the emergence of totalitarianism. This is not survival, it is a suicide pact. The writer and her ideological allies are chopping at the very foundations of the tree that shelters them, so absorbed in their own narcissistic melodrama that they fail to recognize that when the West falls, they will be the first to be consumed by the chaos they have unleashed. We battle principalities, indeed, but we must also acknowledge the foolishness that invites them in. The state or condition called civilization is the state or condition in which men and women live together in a society characterized by a high level of culture, science, and industry. Yet the modern feminist mind seeks to dismantle this structure brick by brick, replacing the masonry of natural law with the flimsy cardboard of grievance. Arthur Schopenhauer, that great pessimist and red-pilled prophet of the 19th century, famously observed that women are big children throughout their entire lives, and examining the screed titled Aesthetic Militarization, the silent warfare of everyday survival, we witness this immortality weaponized into a nihilistic ideology. The writer of this piece is not a thinker. She is a non-player character, NPC, running an autoregressive loop of leftist clichés, devoid of the transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness. She operates entirely on the axis of propaganda generation. Status is claimed as the eternal victim. Chronology is gated behind lived experience. Meaning is exaggerated so that a request to speak up becomes ocular incarceration, and feeling is treated as the ultimate determinant of truth. This is gamma bias in its purest form. Where male suffering is invisible, men are the oppressive class by default, and female minor inconveniences are elevated to cosmic tragedies. She writes about the Cold War in boardrooms, unaware that while she worries about her eyeliner being fortifications, men outside those boardrooms are jumping off bridges at a rate 4 to 5 times higher than women. Their silence not a hoarding of energy, but the final tragic outcome of a society that views them as disposable tools. This writer attempts to frame makeup, that ancient tool of sexual signaling, as aesthetic militarization, a defensive armor against a predatory male gaze. This is a deliberate inversion of biological reality, easily dismantled by the evolutionary psychology of Dr. David Buss. In The Evolution of Desire, Buss elucidates that men are visual selectors, and women are the selected. Makeup is not a shield, but a peacock's tail, an offensive weapon designed to signal high mate value, fertility, and youth. Red lipstick mimics the blood flow of sexual arousal. Eyeliner mimics the wide, high-contrast eyes of health. This writer claims this is a warning sign, but biologically, it is a mating invitation. To reframe this as survival in a storm of male entitlement is to engage in a fantasy of victimhood that ignores the brutal mating market. The predatory gaze is merely male assessment, a biological imperative to filter for fertility. When a woman spends 2 hours curating her face, she is not protecting herself from violence. She is engaging in intrasexual competition to secure the highest status male she can attract, hoping to extract resources and commitment while blaming the very men she desires to attract for looking at her. We must expose the empathy gap and male disposability at the heart of this narrative. The writer complains of the naked vulnerability of the female form, yet society ignores the naked vulnerability of the male form, which is drafted into wars, sent down mines, and compelled to perform in the corporate boardrooms she despises. If a man fails to focus or speak up in a meeting, he is not reclaiming autonomy. He is fired, his livelihood stripped, and his utility to the machine terminated. Women possess the luxury of emotional labor and dissociation, luxuries funded by the surplus value generated by male toil. This is the conspiracy of genocentrism. Men are the moral agents, burdened with the duty to perform, while women are the moral patients entitled to judge that performance while demanding the rewards of it. The writer mentions HR departments instructing women to lean in, but fails to realize that for men, leaning in is not optional. It is a biological mandate imposed by the apprenticeship mastery ladder of civilization. Men climb this ladder or they die. Women demand to be carried up it or they sue. Celebrating distraction, wandering minds, and silence as acts of rebellion undermines the core virtues of Western civilization. The canon prioritizes focus, directing the will, temperance, impulse control, and prudence, actionable wisdom. What the writer labels necessary acts of dissociation, the Greeks termed akrasia, a weakness of will. Positioning distraction as a virtue fosters incompetence. The trivium demands mastery of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, yet a mind rejecting full focus because it sees attention as submission cannot achieve this. The mixed constitution and subsidiarity require capable individuals managing their domains with clear authority. A culture that praises mental drift as radical autonomy fails to build infrastructure, maintain power systems, or uphold justice. The writer's glorification of akrasia represents more than personal negligence. It advocates for the dismantling of the West's functional infrastructure. Schopenhauer cautioned against overlooking this distinction. The female essence differs fundamentally from the creative, genius-oriented spirit of the male, which is tied to the will to live and the quest for mastery. The wandering mind referenced in the piece is not evidence of profundity or defiance. Rather, it represents the biological baseline of a sex that has, through history, been spared the essential need for invention and protection. Men construct structures because failure to do so results in exposure and starvation. Women criticize because they reside safely within the frameworks men erected. The writer asserts that men enjoy the luxury of focus, yet focus is actually a load men must shoulder to avert the disintegration of the civilization safeguarding her. Comparing a woman's silence in a conference to the trauma of oppression disparages the quiet of the worker, the quiet of the soldier, and the quiet of fathers removed from their children's existence by a family court system that regards them merely as financial assets. Let us employ formal logic, the dialectic of the ancients, to dismantle this absurdity once and for all. Major premise: the maintenance of subsidiarity and the mixed constitution, the pillars of a free and functioning Western society, require citizens to possess the virtues of focus, clarity, and authority to execute their duties. Minor premise: the article aesthetic militarization explicitly frames focus as a trap of submission, clarity as mimicking the aggressor, and authority as male violence that must be disrupted by silence and distraction. Conclusion: therefore, the article advocates for the destruction of subsidiarity and the mixed constitution, effectively calling for the end of Western civilization itself. This entire ideology is a self-sealing immunity loop, designed to protect the believer from reality. If you criticize the waste of vanity, you are patriarchal. If you demand focus, you are oppressive. If you point out the biological purpose of beauty, you are predatory. This is the mechanism of sanction. Shame and ostracism are used to enforce the asymmetric status, where women are always right and men are always wrong. She claims to reject the demand to be seen on the terms of oppressors, yet she writes an article demanding to be seen exactly on those terms as a victim. It is a solipsistic word game, a conspiracy of lies intended to keep the betrayed man confused and guilty, but we see through it. We recognize that aesthetic militarization is just makeup, and silence is just lack of agency. The spell is breaking. The red pill is the logic that cuts through the noise, and the noise of feminism is nothing more than the screeching of those who refuse to grow up. We have stripped the paint off this rotting edifice, revealing the petty narcissism underneath. This writer claims her silence is a hoarding of energy against the male monologue. But through the clear lens of the trivium, we see this is merely the silence of incompetence masquerading as strategy. She calls her mascara a militarized fortification against the male gaze, but evolutionary biology, specifically the work of David Buss, tells us it is purely offensive signaling, a biological siren song demanding the very attention she pretends to abhor. This entire framework is a symphony of gamma bias. Women are the fragile moral patients, men the aggressive moral agents. Her distraction is framed as radical autonomy, while your desire for focus is pathologized as violence. We have exposed the semantic inflation where a bad day at the office becomes ocular incarceration. You now possess the antidote to this toxin, recognizing that their resistance is nothing more than a refusal to grow up. Understand what is actually being destroyed here. When the left reframes akrasia, the lack of self-control, as a virtue, they are dismantling the very foundations of Western civilization. The apprenticeship mastery ladder that built our cathedrals and our constitutions requires focus, temperance, and the grueling acceptance of duty. By demanding that we celebrate female distraction and incoherence, they are not liberating women, they are exempting them from the reality of cause and effect. This is the empathy gap in action. We are expected to weep for the naked vulnerability of a woman choosing her lipstick while ignoring the millions of men disposably crushed in industrial accidents or discarded by the family court machine. The writer is an NPC running an autoaggressive loop of grievance, entirely disconnected from the transcendentals of truth and goodness, possessed by an ideology that eats its own tail. You stand now at the precipice of a new understanding, armed with the irrefutable logic of the syllogism and the timeless wisdom of the Stoics. You see that the silence and distraction they champion are not weapons of war, but the white flags of surrender in the face of responsibility. Do not let the asymmetric status games of HR departments or the shaming language of cultural Marxism gaslight you into submission. Your competence is not oppression, it is the lifeblood of a functioning society. The red pill is a bitter swallow, but it sets you free from the conspiracy of lies. Go forth and wield this knowledge with ruthless precision. Build, speak, focus. Let the walls of their narrative crumble under the weight of your unshakable reality. And now the sponsored book introduction, Spiritual Warfare for Betrayed Men. We fight principalities, not flesh. Feminism, Marxism, misandry. I watched my life dismantled piece by piece. After decades, building a career and family, false allegations in court stripped me of my children and half my assets. The system designed to protect families became a weapon against me. I saw men broken daily by the same machine, fathers erased, finances plundered, legacy stolen. This wasn't just injustice, it was spiritual warfare. Demonic forces hijack ideologies like feminism and Marxism to target men, the backbone of civilization. They twist empathy into a cudgel and courts into slaughterhouses. If you felt this betrayal in your bones, this book is your battle plan. We fight principalities, not flesh. My research exposes satanic roots in gender ideology, how Lilith Gnosticism fuels misandry and Hegelian tactics turn family courts into male execution chambers. I prove the trillion-dollar lifetime tax gap where women collectively contribute nothing. I connect abortion mills killing innocent life daily to the devaluation of humanity itself. Chapters like Blood Tithes reveal male tax enslavement while soul slaughter documents abortion's war. Dialectical Traps dissects how courts believe liars. This is Cosmic Combat. Marxism and feminism are Satan's playbook to erase the West, just as he attacked heaven. Red-pilled men on the spiritual path will find truth here. We restore divine order, masculine dominion, and feminine purpose. Armor of God gives spiritual weapons against misandry. Resurrection Protocols shows rising from betrayal. Eternal Masculine reclaims your design. If you're tired of being taxed into oblivion while funding your own destruction, this book is your shield. It maps the demonic hierarchy and delivers thunderous defense strategies. You'll gain actionable insights to reclaim rights, legacy, and spiritual armor. Non-target readers, put this down now. If you endorse cultural Marxism, feminist lies, or satanic heresies, this book will offend you. Go knit a sweater or watch reality TV. Your ideology is the poison we dismantle here. For rational men ready to fight, turn the page. Dominion awaits. Spiritual warfare for betrayed men. We fight principalities, not flesh. Feminism, Marxism, misandry. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.